Well, good morning, everybody. First of all, just a quick announcement about how this week's going to go. I have to travel to Canada later today, and they've got me on a pretty tight schedule for the next 3 days while I'm there, and I'm going to red-eye home late on Wednesday night. So this week might be a little bit just off my normal cadence, but we'll work through it. And just want to make sure you all know, agweather.com, at any time you can go there to get weather information just at your fingertips. So I want to make sure you're aware of that. So just want to apologize ahead of time that this week might be a bit strange for me, especially if flights or my schedule gets moved around at all. All right, kind of big news we're watching is the narrative we've been crafting for the last few weeks here, which is going to possibly change this map. The one you've been looking at here just goes back and looks since September 1st at the precipitation ranks by climate district. And outside of just a couple of events, early September we had 4 waves that came through here. We had a cutoff low we were talking about last week, not last week, but the week before that came out of the 4 corner states. And then, of course, we had Francine. We had potential tropical cyclone 8. We had Helene that kind of did something like this in Milton. And I just want to make a point here. This is over almost a 2-month time period. So when you look and see, you're like, my goodness, how are these ranks not, 1 in this area where there's been, just horrific and devastating flooding? It's because since that system went through, since Helene, we've not measured anything really at all in this area. It's been extremely dry. But thinking about the biggest dry epicenters we've got, start with the Columbia Basin, come down here to parts of the southwestern United States where we've not yet had good flow coming off of the Pacific. So much of the Midwest, Central Plains, Southern Plains, Northern Plains, this large geographical area, one of our biggest ag belts in the country, has been extremely dry. Great Lakes Basin is dry, the Northeast is dry, and even after these systems rolled through, it got quite dry here as well. Maybe that's a little bit easier seen when I show you just October. So these are the October precipitation ranks by climate district, and as I look at it, I see a lot of them in the 130s, meaning that over the time period of 1893 to present, this would be a top 3 or driest if it's 132. On record here. One more way to look at this is just to show you the last 30 days of total accumulated precipitation as a percent of normal. And all we're now capturing is the tail end of Helene here. That's Milton, and that was the cutoff low that we talked about that set up over the 4 corner states and really delivered incredibly heavy rainfall we talked about last week in this area. So this is how, this late summer and, start to fall has kind of shaped up. And I've made a case for the last couple of weeks that I'm very worried about the influence of this on next year. Knowing that it's difficult for fall to break a drought pattern. It's difficult for winter to break a drought pattern, especially in the midsection of the country. Now, across the south and across the west and even along the east coast, we can break it. It's this area here that I'm most concerned about. And primary reason for this is once it gets cold in the northern plains, you lock whatever moisture's in the soil through frozen soils. When you think about the Midwest and the central plains, systems roll through here so fast, and the fact that it's cold, meaning the atmosphere doesn't contain as much water anyway, means that it's difficult to get a break in the drought. Next, you also have to remember that if snow does fall in here, most of the snow either evaporates, sublimates, or you get melting and runoff. You don't get the benefit of pulling it back deep into the soil, which means we have to rely on spring rains. We've been talking about that for weeks now. I just want to give you a couple of other points to think through. This would be where the Mississippi River is currently. It's almost back down to 10 feet below low stage. But the overall thing here, when we think about the soil moisture, the recent precipitation is, we knew that a pattern shift was going to be happening at the very end of this month. And we have to ask ourselves, can we overturn this in such a way that November, buys us time to get better precipitation later as well to undo this drought situation? Because I'm sure you've all seen the newest drought monitor. The drought monitor is an incredible resource. I often don't make such a big deal about it as maybe I should, simply because I don't feel as though, and it's not designed to capture the rapid onset of drought, but when you have over 80% of the lower 48 in some form of drought, this is where all these concerns come in. So here's the beginning of what I hope could tell you could be the end, but I don't think it is. That is a wavy North Pacific jet. And I'm very interested in how this trough works all week long and what this one does here. There are 2 systems, these are the primary ones, one here and here, that over the next 10 days are going to dive into the west and give us this. That is how you undo drought. It's southwest flow. Let me sweep you around so you can see it. So we covered this long before we got into this discussion. Remember back in September, I said, boy, if we're going to go into a wet fall, you have to have deep western U.S. troughs that flow coming out of the southwestern ridges over the southeast. That's to undo a central United States drought. So the more often that you see the pattern doing what it's doing right here, the better the chances are that we have more repeated events or that we're going to have chances for precipitation. That's it. That's the whole story. And I've got one here and one there. Going, well, what about the one in the middle? Well, its interaction with the ridge that's to the south and that's preceding and the following troughs is what takes this one kind of out of the equation for being the big precipitation maker. And I'll show you that again in a few minutes. But the reality is this. The week 2 forecast we showed a week ago, we're picking up on it. Now we're within a week of seeing the first of these two systems. And the WPC has got decent moisture, really good moisture coming in from Northern California through coastal Oregon and Washington, in throughout the Intermountain West. It has a pretty large dry swath that comes from parts of New Mexico and Colorado and stretches into western parts of Kansas, central Nebraska, and this part of South Dakota. With on the northern side, we may even be talking about chances for snow here. I got to look at this very carefully to make that assessment. But I want to be very careful with what you're going to see in this area. This looks like widespread heavy rainfall. Now, is there chances of picking up 2 to 3 inches in the core of this? Yes. But in a few moments, I want to make a point that some of this is going to be coming through in the form of thunderstorms. Some of it will be coming in the form of just moisture running the periphery of a large ridge that's going to sit over the southeast. And it will be the locations that get both of those things that get the heaviest rainfall. But the map tries to paint this very uniform view of how this is going to happen. And we know what it'll look like in the end. There'll be places that get a lot, no places that miss. But the southeast ridge, which is going to keep this area very dry, is what's going to be quite key to this whole pattern unfolding. So here's the other part of this. The GFS model, which I feel does a better job at kind of finding the risk of the highest winds. Over the next 7 days, you can see that all the way from the Pacific Northwest coast into interior spots in the western mountain ranges, coming out here into the southwest, leaving New Mexico and Colorado, Texas, and then racing in the midsection of the country, there's going to be 40 to 50 plus mile an hour wind gusts as the pressure gradient really tightens up. And this extends into parts of eastern Canada as well, and it hits the Great Lakes pretty hard too. The southeast, staying under high pressure, is going to be the calmest, but no moisture getting in this area anytime soon. Okay, so all hazards weather map early this morning. We've already got the red flag warnings extending into parts of Colorado, Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. We have the wind watches around that, the high wind warnings as well. On the backside, winter weather advisories, a few places with winter storm warnings, strong winds coming out of Southern California into Arizona as well. We've got a few places where we're watching for freezes this morning, coastal California, and then over here in parts of Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, and getting back into parts of Pennsylvania as well. And if we look down farther to the south, there's some dense fog in a few places here. In fact, I was looking at some satellite data. There's some pretty low-hanging cloud over the southeast as well. But what we're breaking away from is this. For most of October, what drove the dryness was, remember where I keep watching where that large blob of hot water is? It's kind of sitting somewhere in here. We just saw ridging north of it, which promoted troughs that left the Bering Sea, dove into the Gulf of Alaska, and then ran up over this ridge. That was what it was. This ridge extended right in through this area, and it's what promoted such dry conditions. Well, in the last month, the waters have cooled off here. And we've seen the large, warm blob of water underneath this ridge, which is what you're seeing here, shift a bit. And the whole pattern seems to be responding to that, plus MJO movement, La Niña trying to build, and just a cascading group of events that's starting to move the whole pattern toward this. Now, again, I apologize. I make all my maps centered on the prime meridian. As you look at it, though, the ridge, which was way over here, is now north of Hawaii. So what did that do? That set the whole kind of daisy chain of troughs and ridges farther to the east, like this one's pulling in much closer to the Intermountain West. The ridge that was from California to the Great Lakes is now sitting here, and it's really anchored over the southeast. So the flow is going to come over the top of this and then dive here into the North Atlantic. There'll be a large ridge that forms in parts of Europe, deep trough in Russia. And that's just different. That is a whole different look. Now, I'm going to attribute a lot of this to movement in the MJO. It made this sweeping change from phase 4, 5, moving to 7, 8, and 1, and we're going to look at that again at the end. But to say that it's contributed, all of this could be assigned to one thing isn't right. But what I want to show you is the newest model runs look something like this. So artificial intelligence, this is the forecast of height anomalies, and here's the first wave. So Monday into Tuesday, that one digs right here. So where is it sitting by Wednesday? Again, Nevada, Utah, Arizona. Ridge is anchored over the southeast. This one on Wednesday into Thursday leaves. So that first wave comes in and shoots right in this direction. You'll get flow around this ridge the whole time, very strong winds. It's got a reinforcing trough behind it. But that one digs into the northwest, and then right here gets the kick. Now, where did this thing come from? This actually started way off the page, rolled over the top, and helped to dive into this point. It's the wave that's currently sitting over very, very far eastern Russia. It's going to get here by Sunday. And then that one, this is what I'm really interested in. We're getting an interaction between the broader trough to the north and the almost cut-off low over the kind of Arizona-Mexico border here. And this one, the northern trough, is going to take the southern piece and just fling it right over to Iowa, and then it's going to dive on the backside. And this is what's going to make November, let's call it maybe November 2nd into the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, possibly leaving out there to the 6th, very active for a broad section of the United States in here. Ridges follow, ridges proceed, and that's how things look as we stretch it out over just 10 days. So I see these two sizable events over the next 10 days. Now, the first one does bring with it some storm threat. So here's tomorrow, not today, but tomorrow. We can already see the influence of the ridge. The wave is starting to eject, broad area that they have under a marginal risk. But as you get into the day on day 3, this would be, Wednesday, we're going to start to watch for a much larger area of slight risk to begin to show up from Texas into Oklahoma, parts of Kansas, eastern Kansas, parts of Missouri and Arkansas as well, And as that sets up, again, this is middle of the week. This could be the first of 2 big rounds of storms in the central United States over the next 10 days. The second one coming November 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Okay, so that's this. Let's go look at the high-res models. Let's refresh this real quick. There we go. Now, on this, you have blues for snow, rain, and freezing rain. So we're going to have to start looking at these type maps much more often. This is getting through Monday afternoon and evening. The wave is taking shape. There it is. Now look at this. Snow in the Rockies. The low is forming here. See the tight pressure gradient? That's the winds increasing early this week. And then as we go forward, that is through Tuesday morning, tomorrow morning. Now I am hoping that I get to Saskatoon in time so that I can get a little bit of rest and forecast for you in the morning. If I don't, go to agweather.com and you can look at all of these animations. They're all there for you, and you can put in your own location and get it too. But at this point, we're looking at some pretty good snows in the Rockies, adding to what we just got in the last about 30 days or so. So we play this forward Tuesday afternoon and evening. That's coming out of Wyoming. Rain begins to spread across parts of the western side of South Dakota, central North Dakota. And just remember, it's this area and through here that seems to be drier. What you're going to watch is on Tuesday night, getting into Wednesday, right there is where the storms start to line up on the first front. Now that front is going to stall. And the reason it's going to stall is because there's a large area of high pressure here. We have another area of high pressure on the backside, and it's just sandwiched in between. And that's what we're watching on Wednesday for the risk of severe storms. Now the high-res NAM, I've only got the 6Z available as I record early this morning, only goes out to 1 o'clock on Wednesday. It's Wednesday afternoon and evening that we're going to keep a close eye on this area, okay? Now from here, let's walk through 5 models. You've already seen the WPC. This is the newest update from the NBM. The WPC and the NBM almost always look similar, okay? But if we look at the European Artificial Intelligence, remembering that it's lower resolution, it's a lower resolution model, it does have a few differences, like heavier rain into parts of the Red River Valley, getting over Red River Valley, the south, into Arkansas and Missouri. Whereas, look at the other models, they're wetter a bit farther to the north and west of that region. Just small differences, but they're important. This is the GFS. Now, the GFS is attempting, through parameterization, to show where there could be some heavy rains due to convection, but it is not a convection-allowing model. It's parameterized in it. So what that means is you're seeing just run-to-run high variability. In fact, I bet if I click refresh, the new 6Z is in. It is in. And now look, see the changes it just made? It's now got this area with less, but still trying to bring in this heaviest stripe of precip right through there. Okay? Next, this would be the European high-res model. So this one's now run at 9 kilometers. It's the highest resolution of the models I've shown you, other than the NBM and the WPC. And again, it's got this look of locally heavy rainfall. So what I'm trying to tell you is, if you go over here to agweather.com and you just come in, you're like, I got to look at, I'm in Kansas City, somebody help spell that, Kansas City, Missouri. I click submit, and then you come down here and it goes, just show me what the model, wow, look at that, how dry we got. But you come in here like, just show me what each model's saying. You're going to notice they're very different. Like, look at this. Look at the GFS bringing all this precip on Saturday that the European's not bringing through until Saturday night, Sunday morning. And the NBM, which is down here at the bottom, which is a blend, shows you different as well. But one model, 2.57, 2.56, 3.95. I mean, and it's going to change. When the 0Z runs come in, when the 12Z runs come in, you can run this all again this afternoon. It'll have different precipitation amounts. So that's why I'm going to show you this. This is the probability map. I just think it gives us the best idea on who has the best chances for a certain amount of precip. And this is the chance at getting an inch in the next 10 days. Now, when I flip this up to the 2 inches, I bet the 6Z came in. It did. Let's flip you back over. And over the next 10 days, that's your probability of getting 2 inches. So remember, some of those models were much wetter here. The European ensemble's got a much broader area farther to the north that's wet. And of course, they're all wet into coastal Oregon and Washington with this setup. Let's go back to 1. There's 1, 2, and I'm just curious. Does it have, oh gosh, this is the chance of 4 inches. Now, it's a chance, a 10 to 30, maybe 40% chance in that area. But it's just something we have to continue to consider, that there could be some locally, very heavy rainfall there. Let's flip over to the drier side of this. Who's not getting the moisture? Well, it's not going to be where I am. I'm heading up to Saskatoon. I'll get there very late tonight. Very dry throughout this part of the Canadian prairie. Dry. Remember that swath in through here? That's drier. And then we know that the southwest stays drier because the flow is coming in like this, not like that. All right. The southeast is where the high pressure cell anchors, and that's why it's drier here. I think we should just walk through the European model to see if we can put these pieces together. So this is the 0Z run from today. We're just going to watch. We've already seen here, so we know about this. This is through Wednesday. So this is Wednesday afternoon and evening. Now the European model is tossing storms out here on the evening. They'll probably be further down into the Red River Valley of the south as well. High pressure anchored over parts of the east coast and southeast. Next wave is coming in while one is leaving. So this is through Thursday morning. That would be your official trick-or-treat forecast. So the northwest, windy, snowy at elevation. We then see running around the periphery of this ridge from eastern Texas, Louisiana through Mississippi, Arkansas, western Kentucky, Tennessee, right along the Ohio River Valley up to the eastern Great Lakes. Winds calm down a bit on the back side of this. It'll be dry on the southeast side of this and warm. But here we go into Friday morning. That low goes out. Here comes number 2. November 1st, 2nd. Look at that. Oh, this is going to be interesting. When this wave digs, remember there's that cutoff low. It's already beginning to bring this moisture in. And I think there could be a lot of storms in Texas and throughout the Central Plains. This is how the European model shows us storms at this time of year. When are we? This is Sunday, November the 3rd. And as we play this forward, that wave opens up and things just get really quite active. We have to ask the question how long that's going to last. Now, there is some snow with this as well. Let's get the newest update here, and we can see throughout the western states where there is some snow. I did mention maybe some chances for snow in this area. I just started to see that showing up a bit on the on the GFS run. That was the 0Z. I'm going to update this to show you the 6Z. It still has it. So most of the heaviest snow that's not deep into the mountains will be here in this part of Wyoming. And I know that there's still quite a bit of mountains here, but I just want to show you that's where we have the heaviest snow over the next 7 days. So Cascade, Sierra, much of the Rockies, this part of Wyoming, and possibly an area right in through here and here that could see some of the white stuff. You can see it's also there in the European model as well. So northern Wisconsin getting into the UP and then this part of Ontario. Okay, from there, this is how we land about a week from now, right? So that's the next system coming through. And that is why when we look out there, the 2nd through the 8th, risk of really strong winds with that system coming out the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th here, and the risk of heaviest rainfall 2nd, 3rd, and 4th here. So this is just looking at week 2. But overall, because of that system, every one of our forecast models has got a wet go of it in here. Now, do you notice one big difference? The European artificial intelligence is not slowing this down. Its week 2 forecast keeps the Northwest wet. It's got another trough being generated, diving into that area, like just one after another, like one every 4 to 5 days. The CPC, the European model, and the GFS don't. And so if you look at the ensembles, the spread is too large, but the artificial intelligence is really quite aggressive on this. So we have to watch this carefully. I watched it a bit over the weekend, some of the trends, and I'll be honest with you, the European artificial intelligence flip-flopped a lot this weekend. But this is capturing that second system, the November 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, coming through here, starting in the southwest and making its way toward the Great Lakes. What's in question is this. Now, I'm going to make a case for why this could be right in the next couple of minutes, but before I do that, I want to talk to you about temperatures. Here's our frost risk map over the next 7 days. Just take note, we're getting pretty far into Arizona, New Mexico, the panhandles here, western side of Kansas, and also down into parts of Virginia with the frost. But the high temperature side of this is going to be pretty wild. This is today's highs. I mean, deep into the 90s here in the southern plains. Look at this tomorrow. We're expecting temperatures to be up to 30 degrees warmer than average in this area. That's tomorrow afternoon. On Tuesday, there's Wednesday. Front sweeps through by Thursday. So for Halloween, major change in temperatures. So if your kids are trick-or-treating, or if you're trick-or-treating in Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa, Missouri, you're going to go from Wednesday's windy highs with storms brewing here in the 70s and 80s to 50s by the time you get into Thursday, and a major shift in the direction of the winds. But there's a rebuilding before the next system. All the cold air comes back into the western United States for Saturday and Sunday, and that's what sets us up for the next system starting on the 3rd, leaving and going straight across the country like this. All of it made possible because of ridging here, southwest flow coming through the country like that. Now, if you can tell, I'm a bit, I don't know if the word is excited about it, but it's a break. It's something different. And we want to know how long it's going to last. So the day 5 through 10 pattern is just an echo of this. And notice this. There's some warmth building into Alaska. Now, do you remember back in, was that August or September? I said, hey, we have to be watching Alaska during the fall time period. Because when heat builds here, we start to really change the temperature pattern. Usually it's a 5 to 10 day lag, but across the rest of the lower 48. And what we start to notice is, as we get out there into November, there seems to be a signal that at some point in November, we kind of shake off the southeast ridge and allow for some really cold air at times to penetrate into the central part of the United States. So I'm just starting to pay attention to this movement. But what's got me not thinking the pattern's going to get set in a new way is largely, the fact that the MJO is in a position I haven't seen it in a long time. A lot of upper level suppression happening in the Pacific Ocean with rising motion in the Indian Ocean and rising motion in the Atlantic Ocean. And we've not seen that in a long time. That's one piece to this puzzle. Here's the other thing. During that time period, there could be additional tropical development coming out of this part of the Caribbean. Now, we talked a lot about that last week. We knew that the models were putting out phantom hurricanes that were doing this, that were not going to be there, but this has got to be watched. I'm not yet sure what could be coming out of here, and if it even has a chance at getting to the U.S. I'll just tell you this. With the frequency of storm systems coming across the country, it's very difficult to get one of these to get up here in the Gulf of Mexico and come into the U.S. It takes perfect timing for that to occur. So what this draws me back to is this. I think this is the big story. I think this is what's going to put us on what I guess I'd call a week on, week off type pattern. I kind of picked this up a bit on Friday, and I was just saying, wow, if the MJO sweeps out like it did late last week into phase 5, high amplitude out here to phase 6, comes through 781, if this is the beginning of an adjustment in the MJO, because if there's a La Niña, it's going to want to come back to this area, okay? If it just starts sweeping around and making, every, let's call it 4 to 6 weeks, makes the roll around this part of the world, so this is the Indian Ocean and the West and Central Pacific, then we're going to get into, like I said, a week on, week off pattern. Take a look. This is what happens when the MJO goes into phase 7. It's not there right now. It's going there. So what does it do? Everything just kind of recharges. Deep lows tend to form here, and we just get a week off for a lot of the United States with ridging in the west and some, weaker flow here. So everything's on the periphery. We then go to phase 8 and it starts to move. This trough begins to dig. This one begins to deepen. We get low pressure forming over the southeast. We haven't had that. We're not having that now, right? Would you agree? And then you get over to phase 1, it just cascades and breaks down. So the movement of the MJO is signaling a much more wavy North Pacific jet stream. Not blocked, but wavy. And that just tends to send more systems across with greater frequency. And I think the Climate Prediction Center was seeing this and not, unable to give very distinctive areas of above and below normal temperature and precipitation. I think it was a smart call to keep much of the south warm. The reason, the North Pacific jet is very northward shifted right now. Do you remember that earlier? Gosh, if I can go back if you don't mind. Look where it is. It's way up here, okay? And because it's so far to the north, it's shifted so far to the north, we're seeing that their week 3, week 4, is allowing for much warmer conditions to continue in this area. But I think that the temperature pattern is going to be volatile. I think within a week time frame, we'll expect to see through the beginning of November 30 to 50 degree swings. I think that's very common anyway. But if I made an adjustment to the map that's over here on the left first, I would have actually gone after some cooler air in this area. That's just me. And I think these people are amazing. They're my friends and colleagues, and they're brilliant. I just said I would have been a bit more aggressive on the risk of colder air at times coming into this region. And on the precip, while I buy into this, the moment the MJO makes that shift, we'll drop low pressure in here and we'll start to break the drought that's developing over the southeast. The issue here is that we need mild and dry days to continue to clean up after Helene. And so I actually need this forecast to verify for the humanitarian side of this. For the meteorological side of it, I think we could watch for a breakdown at some point in the month of November. This broad area of equal chances, I think the European model may have a little bit better sense on what November could look like. Now, understand, everything that you see here is coming in those next two systems. This is okay. So if I take this out and show you, I don't know, let's go all the way out. Let's go from November 12 to December 12. The frequency of southwest flow, I'm hoping the model's not stuck on persistence here, but the frequency of this flow coming in and making the turn is going to be quite interesting to see if we begin to really erode this drought. But that is your new ECMWF forecast extended all the way out there through December 12th. So November 12th to December 12th. What I don't understand in the model is why we see dryness in the Rockies and Cascades given the activity I'm expecting in the west. So we'll watch that very, very carefully. Okay, all of this is happening while there is a La Niña building. But this La Niña, let me just show it to you real quick, is just bumbling along right here at about 1 degree C below average according to the CDAS data set. And that's right in this area that we're making the observations. The trade winds have at times been enough to consider this to be La Niña, but I am most concerned about that. And let me take you back to where we started. That warm blob a month ago was really anchored here. And it's not to say it's not warm, but it's moved a bit. And all around the edge, we've given some cooler water. So why does this matter? Well, if you just look at kind of first principles of the atmosphere, like the thermal wind relationship, if we have a colder region here and a warmer there, guess what the atmosphere is going to want to do? It's going to want to dive through this. That's what it's going to do. It's going to increase the wind speeds. Now, is it this way or is it that? I don't know. It'll change day to day. But the reality is we're going to increase the speed of the North Pacific jet. It's going to get going. And it's going to send waves across the rest of North America. And I think that's why we keep a much more active pattern throughout this November timeframe. And that is not what typically happens when there's a La Niña. When there's a La Niña, we typically just get wet in the northwest, and the rest of the country tends to have a more bland and drier pattern. I don't think that's the way this November is going to shape up. And some of my evidence is coming from the European model, which we just saw. The other part of it is this. Two graphics to look at. I've already shown you this one way back in mid-October. The Climate Prediction Center, they are at 75% on the chance of La Niña November, December, January. This is what I want to show you. This is the IRI multi-model probability forecast. This is not done by humans. It's entirely done statistically using the dynamical models to influence those stats. And now look at this. November, December, January, February. La Niña to neutral. That's a weak signal to suggest that we could be dominated by La Niña this winter. And that is why last week, and if you didn't watch it, I would encourage you to do it again, I tried to cover at the beginning of last week 3 important things. What does weak La Niña mean? What does the influence of this mean for next growing season? And then we covered on last Wednesday the solar cycle stuff, which I think a lot of you really wanted to hear more about. I read all of your comments after that, and I'm building another analysis so that I can answer some of those questions. But the fact that we could have a weak La Niña event is going to be critical. And it's not just for our winter. You say, well, what does it even mean, Eric? It means that subseasonal things like the MJO sweeping through all these phases like it's going to be doing in November will be the bigger influencer on the pattern than La Niña will. And I think that just gives us a much more volatile winter. But it means it's less predictable as well. So I got a couple more slides to finish this up. We're going to start in South America. Major planting progress in Mato Grosso. So last week we were 35% off of a year ago. Now we're only 25% off. 15% off. 70 minus 55 is 15. So remember, though, a year ago, all planting came to a halt almost because of really dry air that started to come in. And the rest of October, November, December was record dry. That's not the case this year. Over the next 7 days, very dry in southern Brazil, but this area was super wet. We're getting the rainfall to the north, and then week 2 looks something like this in the European. That's a lot of wet weather for a broad area where they grow a lot of crop. Who's not wet? Well, maybe Cordoba over to the southern part of Buenos Aires down here, the province. Maybe central Paraguay, and way far in the north and east. And the newest forecast, again, going out there to December 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. This would be all November 9th to December 9th. Very wet in this area. What I'm waiting on, and I've drawn this now several times, is that if La Niña does have an influence, you'll see it showing up where I put those Ds. That's where the dryness will come in. Okay, that's what I wanted to get to this morning. Again, I apologize if something happens with my cadence of videos early this week, as I'm just on a very, very tight and rough schedule with events going on in Canada. But I hope I'll be back normal cadence very soon. But I appreciate your patience. You all are great, and we'll just talk again soon. Thanks.